podcast, we're going to hop right back into it. And we're going to start with Rashod Bateman from the Baltimore Ravens. He was picked with the 27th overall pick in the NFL draft. And there's been a lot of conversations about Rashod Bateman as to where he compares to some of the other receivers in this class. I know in particular a lot of people have been comparing him to Rondell Moore, but is there a conversation to be made that he's better than other receivers like Kadarius Toney that went before him? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Kyle. What do you have to say about Rashod Bateman?
Yeah, as far as the Bateman, he's a guy that I think a lot of other people in the industry were higher on than I was going into the draft. But one thing I do think kind of happened with his landing spot is he's kind of seemed to fall down in some rookie drafts that I've seen, and he's kind of back to where the place that I kind of thought he should be all along. If he falls any further than where he's kind of going, like I've seen him fall as far as like 17th, overall in some super flex drafts. And I think that's just a little bit of overreaction from the market. It'll probably settle down. He'll probably move up a little bit more as the draft season goes along and closer to the season. But I think there's people need to be really careful because we saw this with AJ Brown, where he went to a less than desirable situation a few years ago, and people pushed him down to the late first, second round in some rookie drafts, and that was turned out to be a pretty big mistake. You can't overreact to some situations. Lamar Jackson's still developing as a passer, and we really don't know whether the Baltimore offense may open up or not. The part of the reason why they might be running so much and having such low volume in passing is because they really depended on their defense and their running game. But it also might be an issue because they didn't have the wide receivers with the skill sets to produce. So Bateman adds a very vital piece, in my opinion, that they did not have over the last couple of seasons in a possession receiver, that moves the chains, as well as another red zone threat to help out with Mark Andrews, because really their receivers have not been responsible for very many touchdowns last year. And Marquise Brown, where I think he's a good football player as far as stretching the field when he's healthy. I'm not sure that he's the type of guy that you really want to depend on in Dynasty, especially in PPR leagues, because he just is not going to have a high volume with the average depth of targets that he gets.
I'd argue that this landing spot for Rashod Bateman is a fantastic landing spot for Rashod Bateman because you have an offense here with Marquise Brown, and like you said, Marquise Brown is used primarily as a deep threat. This is not a guy that's going to be demanding wide receiver one targets. I think he's going to be demanding some targets, but he's a guy that's a good deep threat, and he's going to have big games here and there. But the Baltimore Ravens are lacking a number one receiver, and they haven't had a number one receiver for quite some years. And I can't remember, quite frankly, the last time they had a number one receiver. And Rashod Bateman's the guy to me that could hop right in there and become a true number one receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. This is a great possession catch. This is a guy that is just an all-around great receiver. He's going to be a great match with Lamar Jackson, and he's probably going to get some solid targets right out of the gate. And so I'm pretty high. I was pretty high on him before the draft started. I had him probably about my fourth or fifth best receiver. And this landing spot to me doesn't change anything for Rashod Bateman. I still think he's worthy of a late first-ish pick in Dynasty rookie drafts. Depends, maybe even a little bit higher. But I think overall Rashod Bateman's a great receiver. And I would even argue, because I know a lot of people are considering Bateman to be the top of like the second tier for rookie receivers. But I would argue that maybe he should be considered with the first tier of receivers as well. Because if you're considering Jalen Waddle to be in that first tier of Dynasty receivers this year, and a lot of people are, then I have to make the case that Bateman is right up with Jalen Waddle. Because you look at Jalen Waddle's competition and Will Fuller and Devontae Parker for targets, and then you look at Bateman's competition for targets as well, and you have like Marquise Brown. And the opportunity is actually better for the Ravens. And I'd have to argue that Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa as well. And yes, I know that they've been known for the running game in the past, but I think that's just naturally because they haven't had an alpha dog receiver like Rashod Bateman. And also, Rashod Bateman's a guy that is going to be able to handle a lot more targets than Jalen Waddle. I don't see as many targets and receptions for Jalen Waddle. So I actually think that Rashod Bateman's a very good receiver and that he's someone worth considering in your Dynasty rookie draft and would be a great value if you fell to like the back half of the first round in your Dynasty rookie draft. Okay, let's move on to